Ladies and gentlemen, Tupac Shakur warned us about people like Jeff Pearlman in his last interview before he died. There's a few other false narratives and pieces of information that Jeff Pearlman is getting wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. I appreciate you. Your boy Delray, Richardson, a platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. I thank you for tuning in. Who we got in the building? Nancy Nicole, Chili C53, Kenneth Malone. And I'd like to welcome everybody else outside of the chat. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button. Like I say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, or before I drop some of this straight game, please do yourself a favor, as well as me a favor, and click on the little bell notification right below this video, ladies and gentlemen. I'm about to get right into it. We got Kennard, Ivan Ooze, Boogie Down, peace, what's happening? Like I said, hit the like button, hit the thumbs up button, ladies and gentlemen. Let them know we up in here. We got a hell of a discussion to have. I came across some more information that I'm going to share with you guys today. And like I said, once again, the interview that Edie did over on his podcast, or should I say YouTube channel, involving Jeff Pearlman, I thought was very disrespectful, and I'm going to tell you why. Who's that? Shanta's in the building. Uncle T, Boogie Down. Oh, wow. The one that played football? Shanta? The one that plays football, who played for what was that, the Chargers or the Rams? Sorry to hear that. Like I said, once again, somebody said, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., did you also play chess versus Rafael Perez inside Death Row like Omar Bradley did? Wow. Yeah, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said he didn't know Rafael Perez. Was that a lie too? Amazing. Oh, okay. Kennard from The Wire. Thanks for clarifying that. Anyway, at any rate, you know, it's tragic. Shreveport, Louisiana in the building. No whammies. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we have a Jeff Pearlman making the rounds in regards to Tupac Shakur's many lives, if you will, right? Like I said, I always started off by Jeff Pearlman didn't know Tupac. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something. When Edie from the Outlaws just did, it was one of the segments he did with Jeff Pearlman on his podcast. And Jeff Pearlman kept pointing his finger at Edie, right? Like, you know, as to let me tell you, let me tell you, let me tell you. You know, there's certain things about body language that you can read. And Edie was trying to be, I guess, as respectful as possible. I really don't know his true intentions. But when Jeff Pearlman kept pointing his finger at Edie, I thought it was disrespectful. You know what I mean? I would address that right away, man. You stop pointing your finger at me. I'm not a child. I'm not a little boy. You know, just from that perspective. I noticed on other podcasts where Jeff Pearlman, he felt a lot more comfortable, if you will. And when you watch the Edie interview, he was a little more less at ease, if you will, in his conversation. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get into it like this. as a recap on the video earlier today released, like I said, if you understand what the hype button is, please press the hype button to hype the video to get it out to more people, ladies and gentlemen. For some odd reason, some videos get out a little bit further than others, but it is up to the people and you to decide, like I said, that this narrative and these facts get out in regards to the Tupac Shakur and this bogus book that Jeff Pearlman has wrote in regards to what he's talking about in Tupac Shakur. Let me let you know another thing. James Anderson, a friend of mine, and Jay Flex for most people that don't. I just found out in listening to Jeff Pearlman's interview that he did an interview with Jay Flex. Right? Jay Flex wrote "California Love" for Dr. Dre, "Keep Your Heads Ringing," and a few other hits for Dr. Dre. Once again, I told you where, because it wasn't until James Anderson did an interview on the Art of Dialogue, which I helped facilitate, and Art interviewed him the first time, right? Ladies and gentlemen, you got to understand this. This is where Jeff Pearlman got all of his ideas and a lot of the information that he's basically claiming that he's talking so eloquently about and trying to deliver as if he's a first-hand source of this information. He's simply not. He's simply not. You can go watch the interview over on Art of Dialogue with Jay Flex, and you'll hear Jay Flex say for a fact, right, that Delray, you was around then, you know, right? For all of the people trying to displace and say all of these things, he, as a matter of fact, said that. I didn't ask him to say it. Because he know, like I said, how would I know to go and ask Jay Flex for an interview if we weren't around down with Dr. Dre, down at Record One, hanging out, Butter, and all of these other people that were around at that time. Bruce, his former bodyguard. Who else? Oh, man, there was so many people, you know what I mean, that when Dre had left Death Row and he was trying to form Aftermath, like I said, we would be down at the studio damn near every day. You know what I mean? Down at Record One Studio off of Ventura Boulevard, ladies and gentlemen. For, like I said, once again, for people who don't really understand and know. But I found that he mentioned James Anderson's name, and I was like, wow. So I know that Jeff Pearlman is what you call trying to throw out this revisionist history in regards to Tupac. But ladies and gentlemen, Tupac warned us about people like Jeff Pearlman. He warned us. He actually warned us in his last interview. But before I get into that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get into this, and I'm going to get into it live. Jeff Pearlman keeps trying to reignite some kind of this case that was allegedly filed against Tupac, right? This was a police report, ladies and gentlemen. Let me show you. I want you to look at this very carefully. If you're at home on your big TV or whatever, I want you to look at it very carefully. And I'm going to tell you why it was really, truly nothing of concern. And Jeff Pearlman only used this as a catalyst to try to sum up or drum up publicity around his bogus book in regards to Tupac. I want you to check this out. And like I said, once again, you have to understand where I'm coming from when I say this, right? We also went over, he claimed that the book is just doing this awesome number, 711 in books, the hardcover edition. That means when I say that, 711 in hardcover edition books, that means it's the 711th book as far as hardcovers are concerned, right? In the Kindle edition of books, it's 5,000. Now, Kindle, you can like read it from your Kindle pad or your iPad or whatever have you, right? The Kindle edition is 5,114, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, the book flopped as it should, and I'm going to show you why, right? I want you to pay attention to this because this is very important, right? Look, like I said, once again, I got this information because Greg Kading talked about this a while ago. Once again, this is where Jeff Pearlman got the information from. He did no extensive research. He watched Vlad TV. He watched the Art of Dialogue. And he basically said, and he read other people's books, like Stacey Robinson's book in regards to Tupac. And he felt like, you know what? I'm smarter than them, so he thinks. And I can write a book, and basically reiterate the same shit that they did in their interviews and in their books, but just come from my perspective and act as if I found out new information in regards to Tupac Shakur. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to tell you that simply did not happen, but I want you to pay attention to this document right here, ladies and gentlemen. This right here is a Los Angeles Police Department follow-up investigation, right? And this is, like I said, this was an update, right? From what I guess the original police report that was filed. This is a follow-up investigation. So not only did the young lady file one police report, but they did a follow-up investigation. This is how thorough it was in regards to this certain situation involving Tupac Shakur. As you can see, the victim name book is redacted, right? But I want you to look at the specifics. Is the R/S report. It's a report, right? I want you to look right below the victim name, which is redacted, scratched out. And I want you to see the number 2 that is circled, right? It says cleared other, right? This information, Jeff Pearlman is actually reporting on. He knows this information, ladies and gentlemen, but is trying to bring this information back alive as if it was something that allowed Tupac Shakur to slip through the cracks or not be actually charged for something that he was responsible for. You understand what I'm saying? I want you to understand. So now, as we move on, right, you will see in the first, it says male, sex, male, black, eyes brown, height 5'9", weight 170. Then it says Tupac birthday June 16th, 1971. Then you see Tupac Shakur's name. And then the address, 4826 Nagle Street, Los Angeles. Beneath that, you clearly see, ladies and gentlemen, that it says the DA declined prosecution. As you see the number 2 above that, right? Circled and said cleared, right? Ladies and gentlemen, Tupac, this is a follow-up investigation. This is not the initial police report, but this is then a follow-up investigation in which the DA declined prosecution and says, based on the information that they found, right, there was no need to file any kind of charges or prosecute Tupac Shakur. Therefore, he was cleared. Now, I say that to say this. Jeff Pearlman is out here trying to articulate and explain to people like Edie over on TV on YouTube. He's trying to explain to Edie the reason for him including this information in his book. But as we factually read the document just now, ladies and gentlemen, that is the actual follow-up investigation document. Ladies, Tupac was cleared, right? The district attorney declined to prosecute based on insufficient evidence that would have led them to believe that Tupac Shakur did anything. Jeff Pearlman goes on to say there was this alleged DNA and all of the. Ladies and gentlemen, if there were DNA, just like in the Ayanna Jackson case, there was no DNA, no semen, no none of those things, no forced entry, no none of those things. Ladies and gentlemen, if those things were true in this case, you can best believe that the district attorney of Los Angeles, ladies and gentlemen, would have filed charges against Tupac Shakur. I'm going to flash it one more time, right? You can best believe that if there was any scintilla of evidence against Tupac in regards to this situation, that they would have filed charges. I say that to say this. Jeff Pearlman is running around on various YouTube channels pretending like he uncovered information that he didn't. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a lie. If you take the information from what is on the which is on the document right here, It simply says the DA declined prosecution, right? Notice when Jeff Pearlman went on to Edie's channel and these other channels, he did not take the documentation that he said he viewed with him so it can be corroborated as to what he's saying versus what the actual document says, ladies and gentlemen. That is misleading. That is a misrepresentation of the facts. The fact of the matter is the DA declined prosecution. It's just as simple as that. And Tupac was cleared of any kind of wrongdoing. Now, I'm not saying that nothing happened to the young lady in question, but based on the investigation, as you see at the top left-hand corner, based up the follow-up investigation, right? They did a follow-up investigation. Based on the follow-up investigation, the district attorney, as well as the police officers and people involved, found that there was insufficient evidence in regards to charging Tupac Amaru Shakur with any wrongdoing. But according to Jeff Pearlman, when he goes on to these channels on YouTube, lacking the documentary evidence that would basically be consistent with the lie that he's telling, right? The only reason why they didn't prosecute, because they said that she could have ran. The only reason why they didn't prosecute her is because they say she could have ran. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the truth. The truth here is that, number one, the charge, the actual information actually made it to the DA, because it says DA declined prosecution. When Jeff Pearlman is telling this story, he's basically saying the only reason why I didn't get charged because the police officer decided that she could have ran away. No. There has to be more. The police officers do not charge with crimes. They make arrests. The information and investigation is done. What you see, the follow-up investigation is done by the police, right? Okay. And they forward the information to the district attorney. And the district attorney is the ultimate source or ultimate factor in making some kind of arrest. The arrest wasn't made. The DA declined prosecution. The number 2 is circled, that Tupac Shakur was cleared. That's not the story that Jeff Pearlman is telling. He's telling a whole totally different story, as if he lived it and was around in the vicinity, in which he was not. The reason why I say that, ladies and gentlemen, is because you can see this revisionist trying to recreate Tupac Shakur's legacy from a guy who didn't know him, who wasn't around him, who did not interview his mother, right? Who did not interview Tupac Shakur, and who did not interview Edie, who did not interview Billy Garland, right? He asked me for an interview. Like I told you, I refused. And there were a bunch of other people, Mouse Man from out of Baltimore, the guy who was with Tupac up in Marin City, who Edie said knocked the guy out that hit Tupac that day, right? Mouse Man said he refused to interview with him. So you got key people who have refused to interview with this guy based on the shenanigans and the uncomfortableness of him coming to ask them to do any kind of interview, because they felt like, you know, when you knew somebody, like, why are you doing a book? You know what I mean? You got people who could have written books. Edie could have written a book. Tupac's father could have written a book. You know, various other people could have written books that haven't written the books. So the question is, where does Jeff Pearlman get the audacity to write a book about somebody he never was around, based on half-ass stories that he received and interviews that he watched on Vlad and the Art of Dialogue? Like I said, once again, James Anderson, aka J Flex, came on the Art of Dialogue because I invited him on. Art interviewed him, right? And the interview did great numbers. Where do you think he went to get the information from that he went to go and ask James Anderson is his real name, J Flex, the questions? Then J Flex came on my channel, and like I said, once again, so all of the information that Jeff Pearlman is trying to disseminate to the public is already available. So this whole book here is about an exploitative opportunity in the name of Tupac Shakur, somebody who Jeff Pearlman could give a damn about. And like I said, that was the reason for the flop of the book, among other things. But let me tell you, because Tupac warned us, I'm telling you, he warned us about people like Jeff Pearlman. In his last interview with Rob Marriott, ladies and gentlemen, Tupac actually warned us. So like I said, ladies and gentlemen, your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter. This is Straight Game TV for the people who are tuning in and don't know, right? Today we're going straight to the source. Tupac Shakur himself warning us about people like Jeff Pearlman 28 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. Tupac warned us about people like Jeff Pearlman 28 years ago, right? On what is that? August 24th, 1996, ladies and gentlemen. On August 24th, 1996, Pac's last interview, right? With Rob Marriott on his when they took the interview and they put it on actually on CD, right? And it was with Rob Marriott. You can go, there's a DVD, you can actually go on YouTube. Yeah, thanks, Jersey Rick. I appreciate you, man. You can go on YouTube and actually listen to it. Tupac, listen. Tupac, he told us in the world exactly what he feared would happen after he was gone. And guess what? It's happening right now, y'all. It's happening right now with Jeff Pearlman. Listen, I need you to understand. Tupac prophesied this, right? He prophesied this. He said, listen, he said, writers used to do shit. Listen, Tupac said, writers used to do shit like that. When he died, the same nigga will be writing a book about my life. He said, support me or don't write about me. Respect me, right? You're doing something I can't do, and I'm doing something that you can't do. This is August 24th, 1996, ladies and gentlemen. He warned us about people like Jeff Pearlman, right? He told us that writers will do shit like that, right? You know, when I'm dead, this nigga will be writing a book about my life, right? He said, support me or don't write about me. Respect me. You're doing something I can't do, and I'm doing something you can't do. Pause, ladies and gentlemen. I need you to understand that. This is the very shit that Tupac was talking. He said, writers do shit like that, right? When I'm dead, he said, that same nigga will be writing a book about my life. Point blank, period. Tupac was already on it. Tupac had prophesied about this situation and what Jeff Pearlman would be attempting to do. That's why it has been non-effective and the book has officially flopped. And people are also, from what I understand, are returning copies of the book. Based on the information, people are returning copies of the book. I had a couple of people hit me and was like, you know what? I'm taking this motherfucker back. Or I'm sending it back. So, like I said, once again, you know, you gotta come correct, right? And Tupac's message at that time couldn't have been more clear, right? Don't exploit my life if you never supported me while I lived. Don't exploit my life if you never supported me while I lived. Jeff Pearlman can't name one Tupac song other than Dear Mama and Brenda's Got a Baby. And he can't name any lyrics in the song other than what he studied in order to write this bogus book, ladies and gentlemen. Alejandro Gonzalez. Alejandro Gonzalez says, when was the last time I saw Tupac Shakur? I believe it was August 29th or 30th. More importantly, if you go on the internet and you see the picture of Tupac in his Hummer holding up 5 fingers, talking about, in reference to my homegirl, asking him how many times that he was shot, it was that day that the picture was taken. It was in August of 1996. As a matter of fact, hold on. Let me show you what I'm talking about, because I don't talk about it, I be about it. Hold on. You see this right here? That was the last day I saw Tupac. You see that right there? Yeah, I own the intellectual property to that picture right there. That was the last day I saw Tupac. Right? So let's not get it twisted about anything that I'm telling you, but let's stay on topic. Feel me? So like I said, when people really want to know and they kicking this mumbo jumbo to you, right? In regards to that, like I said, my homegirls were visiting from Maryland. And Tupac had just bought the Hummer, right? I had seen him, what was that, the 11th at the House of Blues before that. Right? E Styles, what's good? Thank you for the donation, brother. I appreciate you. But more importantly, let me continue with what I'm talking about. Tupac warned us. Tupac warned us about people like Jeff Pearlman, right? And Tupac said what? Don't exploit my life, right? If you never supported me while I lived. You know, I could name each and every time that me and Tupac hung out, the times that I seen him, the places, and all of those things. Like I told you when I first met Tupac, it was through a homegirl of mine who he was dealing with, who he was fucking with. Bowie State University, 1993. Go on the internet. I told y'all about when he let Biggie get on stage and rock it. My man Big Butch was the promoter of that show at the Bowie State Homecoming. Ladies and gentlemen, these are facts. This is why Jeff Pearlman wanted to talk to me, among other reasons. Like I said, once again, but more importantly than that, the reminder of when somebody who did not know Tupac comes out and talks about him from that perspective, right? You got to understand what it is and how it moves, right? Yeah, E Styles, like I say, once again, I appreciate you, man. Love you too, brother. Appreciate that. Like I said, so when I'm saying is, listen, I just looked at a video of Jeff Pearlman and he was telling some young lady that when this was dealing with the Marin City situation. He told the young lady that Tupac and them came to the Marin City picnic festival or whatever when the little young boy got shot. He said, oh, they all piled back into the van. They came in the van. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a lie. That is a misstatement. Edie told him that Tupac had just bought a Cherokee Jeep that they all piled in and was basically sitting on top of each other, y'all. But he's on another podcast actually telling somebody else, yeah, and Tupac and them ran and they jumped inside of a van and that's a lie. That's not true. Once again, Jeff Pearlman is out here talking like he actually lived the situation, was aware of the situation and of the information. Edie corrected him. But like I said, he's still out here talking about another thing. The situation with Ayanna Jackson. I just heard Jeff Pearlman tell somebody that the situation involving Ayanna Jackson happened at the St. Regis Hotel, right? It did not happen at the St. Regis Hotel. It happened at the La Parka Meridian Hotel, ladies and gentlemen. It happened at the La Parka Meridian Hotel. So once again, these inaccuracies, right? And wanting to be somebody who is the source of information, these inaccuracies or flat out lies are really, truly, honestly hurting and making people want to return the books even more. They like, hold on, I've been duped. I've been had. I've been led astray. This guy don't know what he's talking about. Point blank, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, on August 24th, 1996, ladies and gentlemen. And you know the cold part about this, because during that month, I seen Pac, like, let me see, on 11th at the House of Blues, right? And then I seen them like on the 30th, like the 29th or the 31st, one of those days. Like I said, I just showed you the picture. And I seen them. That was the last time I saw Tupac, right? And so now let me be real clear with you in what I'm saying. Let me be real clear with you what I'm saying. So at the House of Blues was the night that I had asked Tupac. It was me, Melly Mel from Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, Scorpio. We all go into the House of Blues together. I told y'all, if you don't know the story, go check it out on the Art of Dialogue. I told y'all that a couple of the outlaws that was with Tupac that night, they weren't old enough to get into the House of Blues. As me and Tupac walking up the stairs, Tupac gave the bouncer guy like $200 or $300 extra, like, yo, get my boys in because they ain't old enough, right? And the dude actually got him in. That was the night he ran into Kobe Bryant upstairs. We was on the top level. Kobe had just been traded from Charlotte to the Lakers. Do your research. You'll understand what I'm talking about, right? See, this is factual information because I was there and I could tell you from what it was and how it happened, right? Right? Kobe there. I found out later that Allen Iverson was there, but I think he was over in the corner, but I didn't see him, right? And so we all there. Okay, cool. We go downstairs. That's where Tupac and Nas first ran into. Ask Nas about it. You can ask Nas. I was standing right next to Tupac there, ladies and gentlemen. At the House of Blues, down on the floor, Tupac, because the East and West Coast was kind of brewing real tough, and people really didn't know what was gonna happen. You know what I mean? I swear to God, like I said, the House of Blues parted like the Red Sea. I'm standing right next to Tupac, and they looked, Nas and Tupac. Nas was with his homies. And they walked up to each other. They hugged it out, shook hands, started talking, blah, 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 and all of those things. I was actually there for that. Nas then goes back to New York. Tupac then hears the song, The Message, when he talks about like fake thug and da-da-da-da. That's when Tupac got mad in the situation and why Tupac wanted to confront him at the MTV Video Music Awards right before he went to Vegas and was shot. That's why Tupac was mad, because he had just seen him at the House of Blues, right? He had just seen him at the House of Blues on the 11th. And Tupac was mad because he was like, yo, why didn't this nigga tell me about him saying what he was saying in the song? Just letting them know like, yo, I said this in the song. You don't trip. It ain't about you, whatever. Tupac was upset about that. And that's why he was so heated at the MTV Video Music Awards, the one that was in New York. Like I said, most people, and you won't hear people talk about that because they didn't know anything about it until I talked about it. Ask Nas. If I'm lying, you can ask Nas. Point blank, period. Or anybody that was with him that night at the House of Blues. You know who was at the House of Blues? It was LL Cool J and Outkast. Point blank, period. Right? But like I said, so when you hear Jeff Pearlman try to come out with this borrowed information, this generally borrowed information, and stories that he done picked up off of Vlad TV and the Art of Dialogue and my channel and other people's channels, right? Who've interviewed people who were there and involved. That's where this is coming from. And Stacey Robinson's book, in regards to the book that you should be buying is Stacey Robinson's book, the authorized autobiography of Tupac, right? From that perspective. You get it? Other than the book that Afeni Shakur released, what's that? The Rose That Grew from the Concrete, and Tupac's poems and all of the things like that, right? Like I said, once again, the big picture. Tupac said what? Don't exploit my life if you never supported me while I lived. Point blank, right? Jeff Pearlman fits the exact warning that Tupac gave, right? Jeff Pearlman fits the exact warning. Tupac, he never met Tupac, right? Tupac, he never had firsthand knowledge of Tupac. Tupac, right? He's selling gossip as facts, right? Listen, he's leaning into shock over truth, right? He's trying to shape Tupac through rumor, not reality. And talking like he knows, because Tupac said, and it was funny to me, I thought it was funny to me because Tupac said, no, he don't know what Tupac said. He listening to somebody else. I talked to Money B and ba-da-da-da, and such and such and such. All of those people were all on Art of Dialogue. James Anderson, Mob James, Money B, who else? And a lot of other people, and some people wouldn't talk to him, like myself, Billy Garland. You know, he said, well, who's that? Kendrick Wells. Kendrick Wells was on the Art of Dialogue. That's where he understood where to get the. He didn't know where to start. He didn't know where to start. And like I said, Tupac warned us about, like I said, Jeff Pearlman fits the exact warning that Tupac gave, ladies and gentlemen. He never met Tupac, no firsthand knowledge. He's selling gossip as facts. He's leaning into shock over truth. He's trying to shape Pac through rumor and not reality, ladies and gentlemen. Do not be fooled. Like I said, a couple of people, they were honest. They were like, yo, Dell, I bought the book. I'm sending this shit back. I don't want nothing to do with this. You know what I mean? And like I said, they were like, after I seen the video about the authorized autobiography by the girl, Stacey Robinson, he's like, yo, I'm getting that book. I'm picking that book up. Point blank, period, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Listen, Jeff Pearlman waited until Tupac wasn't here to defend himself, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, and also he waited until Afeni Shakur was gone, right? He waited until Afeni Shakur was gone so that she couldn't defend her son. But guess what? The autobiography with Stacey Robinson, it has Afeni Shakur sitting down talking with Stacey Robinson in regards to this book. That's what you call authenticity, if you will, right? You know? Listen, Jeff Pearlman waited until Tupac wasn't here to defend himself, most importantly, and that's exactly the behavior that Tupac hated. That's the exact behavior that Tupac hated. I'm telling y'all, man. I'm telling you. Like I said, every time I see him say something about something and it's inaccurate, I'm coming to make a video. What he's trying to do is he's trying to make himself a relevant go-to fact finder in relation to Tupac Shakur. And he's not that guy, right? There were various people who experienced various things with Tupac, you know, and it's sparse. You know, you got Yasmin, who was there since Tupac was born, right? Who was considered his godmother, right? You got his sister, Setua, who is his sister. Like I said, Jeff Pearlman is using Setua as a catalyst to basically say that, you know, everything that he's saying is true. That's simply not true. That's simply not true. Everybody had their own experience with Tupac Shakur, right? Some had major, some had minimal. You know what I mean? Some had minor, some had, you know, somewhere in the middle, right? So once again, you have to understand the big picture and what Jeff Pearlman is trying to do, right? What Tupac really meant, right? To be able to honor someone and to respect them and to come. But see, if he didn't come with these what I call made up new stories, like I said, you don't hear. Since I seen that all hip hop thing about Tupac dressing in cheerleader uniforms and pom poms and kissing boys, I haven't heard nothing else about that. That didn't really move anywhere, right? And Chuck Creekmur, I'm disappointed in him. He sat down with this guy. Little did I know they went to school together, right? Chuck Creekmur is supposed to be somebody who loves and respects hip hop, right? But would lead with a title like that in reference to Tupac Shakur, right? From somebody by the name of Seth Bloom. Somebody who we don't know, we haven't heard from. We don't even know if it's true or not. Like I said, this story, like what? You understand what I'm saying? And this is all hip hop, right? Who's borrowed information and things like that from the Art of Dialogue and so on and so forth, and has done, supposedly be doing real all hip hop. I was disappointed in that title, man. Like I said, once again, I didn't know, but then I sat down and I watched the interview with Chuck Creekmur and Jeff Pearlman, and I was like, oh, they went to school together. Oh, okay. And Jeff Pearlman tried to throw Chuck Creekman a little curveball. Chuck Creekman, he was like, Jeff Pearlman was like, yeah, I was head of the editorial board, and Chuck Creekman was like, yeah, and he said, yeah, you were the head of the what was that, the comics department, something like that, and Chuck Creekman was like, yo, come on, don't do me like that, man. I was the head of the I believe he said entertainment department or something like that, right? But little did I know, so I understood how that works now. I was like, oh, wow. You've seen that nowhere else other than All Hip Hop First. I think 1 or 2 blogs picked it up, but it really didn't go anywhere. Once again, who is Seth Bloom? And Seth Bloom needs to come out and tell us more about what he was talking about, ladies and gentlemen, right? This is something that never came out once again when Tupac was alive. This is what Tupac warned us about. This is what Tupac warned us about, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, right? So now you got to understand what Tupac really meant when he said that, right? Tupac wasn't against being studied, right? He was against being misrepresented, ladies and gentlemen. And Jeff Pearlman has been out here misrepresenting Tupac ever since 3 months ago, before the book was even out. He was trying to get people to prepared. Like I said, before the book even came out, ladies and gentlemen, he was trying to get people prepared with this statement right here, right? He was trying to get people prepared with this one. This was the first incendiary, salacious statement that he made about Tupac that he know wasn't true. Right? This was the first statement that he made about, he knew it wasn't true. And he knew that he would kind of stir up something. This is what you call a journalistic gaslighting, right? And then once again, Edie approached him the other day when he was on the channel, and then he ran back and he copped the plea, right? Like I said earlier, this is the book that you should be buying, not the book by Jeff Pearlman. This book is by Stacey Robinson, the authorized biography of Tupac Shakur, ladies and gentlemen, point blank, right? So now, when you understand that and you get it, you're going to see this right here, once again, misrepresented. This police report, Jeff Pearlman blatantly outright misrepresented the information and the facts behind this police report, ladies and gentlemen. He misrepresented the facts in relation. That's why you never seen him bring, because if I'm going to talk about something, right, and if I'm talking and somebody's interviewing me, I'm going to be able to bring the actual paperwork that represents what I'm talking about as the corroboration that's needed to convey the proper message and the truth. That's not what Jeff Pearlman is doing. He's not doing that at all, ladies and gentlemen. Like I told you before, when you think about the big picture, I was disappointed at Chuck Creekman for, allowing that to be done over that All Hip Hop. That didn't really garner any kind of real big views. You know what I mean? They selling ads on the page. But like I said, once again, that was very disrespectful to Tupac Shakur's legacy. Like I said, usually, let me tell you how it usually happens. When a journalist or a reporter does a story, right? They usually corroborate that with the person who the journalist or reporter say that they talk to. Like, yo, before I run the story, is it okay if you give me the guy Seth Bloom's number, and so that I can go and talk to him to corroborate what you're saying? That wasn't done. It wasn't done, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't done. That was a means to get people to click and view on All Hip Hop. And like I said, what Chuck Creekman doesn't know, that they lost a lot of people by posting that. You didn't gain followers, you lost people. And people who normally would do justice by you and you representing and borrowing their intellectual property, right? To help further and promote your channel. Like I said, content is king. Content is king. And like I said, there's many people that come and pick up articles and videos from the Art of Dialogue and other places, right? And they don't have to let you do that. Like I said, the misrepresentation and the disingenuous nature of that article and stating that Tupac put on pom-poms and was kissing boys without corroboration and a talk with the person who actually said that. It wasn't done. And we see now that Jeff Pearlman and Chuck Creekman went to school together. I was like, oh, because I was wondering how that happened. I know how, because a lot of the stuff when I've been interviewed and things like that for newspapers, they call and they do a backup because they don't want to report, most, newspaper organizations, they don't want to report anything false, right? Or anything one-sided. You see what I'm saying? But like I said, they felt like that was something that, they felt like they wanted to do, and it was, kumbaya and buddy, and the people that you think that would stand tall in sight of stuff like that, man, when it come down to a dollar, man, it, some people kind of look the other way, like I said, Tupac wasn't against being studied, ladies and gentlemen. He was against being misrepresented, right? He said, be honest, respect me, right? And Pearlman couldn't do either. Jeff Pearlman couldn't do either. He couldn't be honest and he couldn't respect Tupac. That's why people are returning the book now. At least a few people that I talk to after they say, man, you know what? I appreciate you giving. And like I said, I don't want to mislead anybody. That's not my intention. My intention is to help you think critically about what you support and the information that you digest, right? When listening to people who just because of their past what they say successes, right? Past successes is nowhere indicative of future performance. Did you hear what I just said? I said past successes is nowhere indicative of future performance, as we can see with this Tupac, a book of lies, I'm gonna call it. You understand what I'm saying? Tupac said, be honest, respect me. And Jeff Pearlman could not do either. It's crazy. And so when somebody thinks about it, and a lot of people can disassociate themselves with their job they're doing. It's like, we just kind of went with that. You know what I mean? That's what, no. Where is Seth Bloom? Where are all these other people? Like I said, the one young lady, I believe her name was Tatiana, the Art of Dialogue interviewed her. She said none of the things to the Art of Dialogue that she said allegedly to Jeff Pearlman. Where did you think that he knew to go and sort of to seek her out? He watched the Art of Dialogue video. James Anderson, he watched the Art of Dialogue video. Because before then, Jay Flex didn't really have a large, number video out there like that before he did the interview with the Art of Dialogue. And then he came on my channel. And that's my man, Flex, my man. Like I said, once again, that's nothing bad to say about him, because I'm sure in Jay Flex doing an interview with Jeff Pearlman came as the sheep. He didn't come as the wolf. He came as the sheep. He did not come as the wolf. And so therefore, in coming as the sheep, people are thinking that, hey, guy, you want to talk to me, want to do an interview, blah, 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 and then once they really get the wind of what he's trying to do, so much so that Edie had to sit down and talk to him like, yo, why would you say this? Or basically, look, hold on. And let me say this, because this is another thing where I know Jeff Pearlman was disingenuous, right? And he meant to blatantly lie about Tupac. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, right? But like I said, when he said this, right? When he said that, he knew it wasn't true. He knew it was a lie. He knew he was trying to be incendiary, right? He knew he was trying to drum up what's the name on the podcast when he said this. But let me deal with one. I'm gonna deal with one line on this one right here. And I'm gonna show you where it's and I hope Flex see this. Hey Flex, if you see this, somebody tell Jay Flex, and you hit him up, you watching. I want you to see this part right here, where Jeff Pearlman says Tupac couldn't fight. He had no athleticism. I'm going to give you that one part right there that he couldn't fight. And I'm going to show you where Jeff Pearlman, where he came as the sheep, but then he turned into the wolf. Watch this. And when he put the book out, check this out. So, ladies and gentlemen, so as I did the interview, as well as the interview on the Art of Dialogue with Jay Flex, and then he came with, so either interview, basically, we covered some of the same stuff. Jay Flex talks about a fight, right? That Tupac, the Outlaws, and them had down at Can-Am Studios, right? After the situation that happened in New York and Tupac them came back from the studio. I mean, Tupac them came back from New York, and somebody allegedly, I think Sharif, shout out to Sharif, my man. Like I say, he was down there too with Dr. Dre and them dope MC, you know what I mean? Crazy with the bars. He was down there with Dr. Dre and them too when I met Flex and them when Flex was writing for Dr. Dre. You know what I mean? Like I said, and working with Dr. Dre. So they got into a fight. The Outlaw, Tupac and the Outlaws, with Jay Flex and his crew. Like I said, because Jay Flex side of the organization was mainly there to work with Dr. Dre. As you can see, Jay Flex wrote California Love, Keep the Head Ringing, and all of those other hits, right? And then when Dre left, Flex stayed down there with Suge. You know what I mean? And so by that being what that was, at the time, Flex talked about the fight that Tupac and the Outlaws and all of them had. So how in the hell, and you know that Jeff Pearlman knew about that because he knew to go and interview Jay Flex, right? So you know he sat there and he watched it, and he talks about these other fights that Tupac had, but he would actually go on public and actually basically say this right here. So you know how disingenuous and a liar he was. He knew the truth. He knew Tupac could fight. He knew Tupac was at the gun range shooting the gun. He knew all of that. All of this shit was in means to try to drum up publicity for his book. He knew it. And then he goes on about talking about how, some of these guys, they actually pay for interviews and blah, blah, blah. Well, let me tell you this. If anybody was paid, it's the same information that you used and absorbed from somebody being paid for their time, not for the interview, but for their time, that Jeff Pearlman went and used the information to go and interview people, as well as to take some of the information and act like he was the first-hand information giver of that information that he went to watch from those paid interviews. So tell me, ain't he a hypocrite? And that's Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. included. When you came to Art of Dialogue, did Art take care of you? Yeah, he took care of you. So I hope you're watching, because we know where the information coming from. You see what I'm saying? At the end of the day, right? These same people that you can help them and help them, with their needs, right? With their physical therapy, with all of those things when they calling you and begging you for money. You know what I mean? Don't get me really started, because I know some things, man. Don't get me started. So when you talk about people and people are talking about it, they got to be real careful in how they tread, because the same people that they helped out will go and turn against them. I'm going to give you some good game right here. Y'all ready? Hit the like button, hit the share button, because I'm about to go in. Listen to this. So when I went on the Art of Dialogue and we pointed out the fact that Tupac wasn't signed to death row, that was the first time that information ever was released. Then you see Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., Gullible John, them come out and try to jump on top of it. It failed. Dismal failure. Point blank period. Failed. Right? Listen. So now they wanted to come and jump on what we were given as the truth. At the same time, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. wanted to come on the Art of Dialogue, and the Art of Dialogue wasn't paying him for an interview when he thought that he was paying him for his time. Right? And that's a manner in doing business. He's running a business. He ain't running no bullshit. Right? So from that perspective, when you understand that, this is the same guy, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., who would go and have him and Gullible John have Jeff Pearlman come on to Bums First, right, and give an interview about information that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. know from what all he said that he knew, and he been trying to tell me and every other African American person who talked, including the Art of Dialogue, right? He been telling, this wrong and that wrong, and Suge ain't this, that, and the other. But when Jeff Pearlman comes out and talks about it and says all of these things, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is over there hucking and bucking and tap dancing, man. He hucking and bucking and tap dancing. He ain't got nothing to say. You didn't hear them not make one not video in regards to that, in regards to the defense of somebody who Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. claimed that they knew, but we come to find out that Tupac Shakur fired him. He didn't tell that, he lied about that. We know that. But he hasn't come out and spoken out about Jeff Pearlman telling these lies, man. Why is that? And Jeff Pearlman was like, yeah, talking about something Tupac being assaulted at the jail, right? I talked to Billy Garland about that. It's over on the Art of Dialogue. 2-hour interview, over 1.3 million views. Jeff Pearlman, when your book does those kind of numbers, holla. He was trying to capitalize. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you because I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to capitalize off the people who really experienced and had experiences with Tupac, ladies and gentlemen. And hopefully that he could do some kind of TV story, then the publisher will go and work out some kind of deal with one of these, TV networks and try to do some kind of, TV story about this book that Jeff Pearlman wrote. Nah. He's told too many inaccurate stories. The situation with Tupac didn't happen at the St. Regis, like he said on one podcast. It happened at the La Parka Meridian Hotel, right? Tupac didn't travel. He didn't travel to Marin City in a van. He traveled in his brand new Cherokee that he just bought, according to what Edie said, because Edie was in the back of the Cherokee. Jeff Pearlman does not know what he's talking about. These are real facts. This is real information, ladies and gentlemen. You can't get things like that wrong. You just can't. That tells me you're not locked in. And you don't really know what you're talking about. Point blank, period. Like I said. So now, here we go. Tupac told us, y'all, you have to watch out for people like Jeff Pearlman. Right? Listen, I want you to understand something. Tupac's weaknesses and his strengths, ladies and gentlemen, right? Tupac weaknesses and Tupac brought up his trauma openly himself. Mama being a crack addict, all of his father and all of the things that he felt. Like I said, even the misrepresentation of Dear Mama in regards to Billy Garland, right? Let me tell y'all this, man. Because we discussed this, I discussed this with Billy Garland, and I was the one that asked him. You can go back and look at all the reports, how Billy Garland felt about Dear Mama, and you're going to see people who borrowed clips from the interview that, like I said, the intellectual property that myself and the Art of Dialogue own and control. Listen to this. I want you to understand something. You're going to see people who took those clips, and when Billy Garland spoke about it, he spoke about it clearly. What did he say? Billy Garland said, well, I was kind of upset about Dear Mama at first. But then he said, once I listened to it, I understand that Tupac wasn't talking about me. Because Tupac, at the time that he wrote Dear Mama, thought I was dead. This is an actual fact. This is how you do an interview and report. At the particular time that Tupac wrote Dear Mama, it was not about Billy Garland. Right? It was about what Tupac believed at the time. And like I said, once again, so when people was like, oh yeah, Tupac said, because me, honestly, I'm asking the question. I'm not knowing when Billy Garland knew about what he knew until he answered that question. And when he answered the question, it gave me clarification on to what all. I was like, okay, I'm like, yeah, you're right. because you came into the hospital after he was shot. Dear Mama and all of that, Me Against the World had already been released. And that was true. That's how you're able to make the connection in regards to what that is. Right? So now, when Jeff Pearlman comes out and he talks about Dear Mama, he talks about it from the perspective, Billy Garland, goes to, supposed to go to the prison to visit Tupac for Father's Day, and he doesn't show up. And, Setchua told me that Tupac was heartbroken. Like, hold on. We don't know if Tupac was heartbroken no more than his heart was fulfilled that Billy Garland didn't come. We don't even know that. Like I said, but what I understand and do know, right, from the perspective that Billy Garland explained to me in regards to getting to know his family and his uncles, right, was alive, right? All of those things, we shared the unseen or other never seen before letter with from Tupac to his uncle. For the first time, we shared that with the world. It was a letter that Tupac had wrote to his unknown uncle at that time, who he had just got to know because Billy Garland had came back into his life. And you can clearly see what Tupac felt at that time. He wanted to get to know his brothers and sisters that he didn't know existed a little bit more now that he knew that they existed. All of this information Jeff Pearlman could not give you. He could not give you, right? And like I said, Tupac's weaknesses and his strengths. Tupac told us who he was and how he felt, right? Tupac didn't need a stranger to psychoanalyze him for a paycheck. He didn't need Jeff Pearlman to try to psychoanalyze him to try to get a check off Tupac's name. Tupac already told us, go listen to the music. Go over there, listen to the interview with the Art of Dialogue. Afeni Shakur, the interviews that she did, and hearing where she stood and what her position was in that matter. Jeff Pearlman didn't discover an undisclosed grave in Lumberton, North Carolina. It was already there. He took a picture of it, put it in his book, and used that also, right, as a catalyst to say that, ooh, look what Jeff Pearlman discovered. I'm Christopher Columbus. No, you not. No, you're not. You're nowhere near Christopher Columbus because it already existed and the family didn't put it out there. Neither did Afeni Shakur put it out there when she was alive. It's just as simple as that, right? Look, like I said, Tupac talked about when his interviews, he talked about having the vibe interview. He talked about trust issues. He talked about the Brenda's Got a Baby context. He talked about all of that. He talked about pain from missing his father in relationships, right? Like I said, until he found out who his real father was. Remember, he did the interview with Tabitha Soren for MTV, walking down the Venice Beach boardwalk, and talked about some of the things that him and his father talked about that he did not bear repeating, ladies and gentlemen, because everything was not for the public. Everything was not for the public, right? Or he put it. Jay Edwards said he put his address in the book. Like I said, hey, look, Jay, that information right there is already public too. You know what I mean? He didn't do anything. Once again, like I said, all of the information you can look it up online. They got a picture of Tupac's actual driver's license, man. He didn't. It's nothing. It's a nothing burger. That's why people taking the book back, right? Listen, y'all, Tupac explained his flaws through his music, through interviews, and evolution. Jeff Pearlman ignored Tupac's truth and pushed his own imagination and own narrative to try to garner attention to settle a book full of what I consider, in my opinion, a bunch of garbage. It's just as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. And the people that I've talked to, they purchased the book. They say they're going to return it. And they're going to get Stacey Robinson's book because that's the authorized biography in regards to Tupac Shakur. Point blank, period, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, point blank, period, right? you know, and you know, let's be honest. Tupac's legacy belongs to the truth, right? Right? If you don't love Tupac when he lived, or if you didn't love Tupac when he lived, Tupac said, "Don't write about me when I'm gone." Jeff Pearlman didn't love Tupac when he lived. He's found a new fascination based on what he saw numbers being done with Vlad, based on what he saw numbers being done with the art of dialogue, based on what he saw people who really had an intimate or professional relationship with Tupac. And Jeff Pearlman decided to say, you know what? I'm going to study all this information and I'm going to come out and write my own book. And I'm going to interview some of the same people they interviewed. And then I'm going to, you know, ask them a question or try to come up with something that they said that nobody else knew about. Ladies and gentlemen, please. And not to say that there's some of the things that we didn't know about or whatever. But like I said, a lot of the things are simply inaccurate, like the Marin situation involving the van versus the Cherokee, involving Tupac having the gun in his hand. Jeff said he had the gun in his hand and he was shaking, right? Edie said, no, Tupac never had a gun in his hand. Jeff Pearlman sit there and points his finger at Edie like he's a child and be like, well, let me tell you this. Let me tell you. Like, what? Man, put your finger down. You know what I mean? You're not dealing with no child. You're dealing with a grown-ass man, right? Is what I would have told him. You feel me? You know, we can talk as men here. You know, you ain't got to tell me nothing and try to tell a man something that the man was there to actually experience. Well, I'm not calling you a liar. You can't call me anything. I was there, right? And one of the key factors is that he got wrong is actually the vehicle they were in that got them to Marin City. He said it was a white van. Edie said it was a brand new Cherokee that Tupac had just bought. And they were all piled in the Cherokee, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Absolutely, Jess D. Shakur. We seen Tupac at the range. Point blank, period. Right? Like I said, look. Tupac sparked the revolution, even until this day, as far as people thinking, how they're moving. Tupac is being taught, you know, courses on Tupac is being taught at universities, right? Right? Jeff Pearlman is a Johnny come lately. Jeff Pearlman he tried to spark controversy. But it's like the Price is Right song when you get it wrong. Boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, once again, when you think about it, Tupac sparking a revolution and Jeff Pearlman trying to spark controversy. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, one of them still moves the world today, and the other can't even move books off of a shelf. You hear me? I said Tupac sparked a revolution. Jeff Pearlman tried to spark some controversy, and one of them is still moving the world today, and the other one can't even move books off of a shelf. Let that sink in for a minute, if you will, right? So like I said, once again, when we talk about what this is and what this means, like I said, we got to protect the artists and the people that come from our community. We can't let people come in and try to change a narrative and try to write all of these other stories and things of that nature. Like I said, once again, you know, I see a lot of the resemblance with Stacey Robinson's book and a lot of that information in Jeff Pearlman's book, and it looks suspicious to me. Stacey Robinson's book came out in 2023. It took Jeff Pearlman 2 years later because he studied all of that and studied those interviews and then came and act like, oh, you know, he was coming with some new information. And then speaking crazy and telling crazy stories about Tupac can't shoot, Tupac couldn't fight, Tupac wasn't athletic, and all of these other lies that he was telling, like I said, to try to spark interest in his book. It didn't work. Like I said, like the Price is Right little song, when you don't get it and you don't make it and they send you away to go, boom, 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 boom. No, people are taking that book back. And they're actually buying this book right here. Look. They're buying this book right here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the book they're buying, right? among other books. Like I said, there's another book that I talked about right here. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, check.
They said Tupac was untouchable, but behind the walls of Rikers Island, he was just a man, wounded, watching his back, and wondering who he could trust. He survived bullets, betrayal, and isolation behind bars. But what happened inside those walls has never been told until now. In the darkest corner of Rikers, he found betrayal and a brotherhood no one saw coming. These dudes smiled in my face, then flipped and tried to kill me, and I never saw it coming. They were Puff's security, Biggie's muscle, Henchman's people, and Tupac knew exactly who sent them. This is the side of Tupac Shakur the world never got to see, told by the man who lived it with him, not in the studio, but in a 6x9 cell. The rap battles, sex and drama with female guards, the tears, the silence after Jada Pinkett's visit, and the moment Tupac almost broke. Before Death Row, before All Eyes on Me, before Machiavelli, there was Rikers. Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur, available now on Amazon. Get your copy. Learn the truth.
Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, Tupac warned us about guys like Jeff Pearlman. The Donald Richardson book, when I read the transcript, I was like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? This is interesting, right? And like I said, there's a few other books that are out there, ladies and gentlemen, in regards to Tupac Shakur that, like I said, I recommend, you guys checking out. But, these lies and these misrepresentations of facts and key things in regards to Tupac's life, ladies and gentlemen, by somebody who didn't know him, who's basically coming out talking about he wore pom-poms and bringing into people into the fold that we've never heard from, that we should hear from, stories that have been uncorroborated other than what Jeff Pearlman is basically telling us out of his mouth. We don't know who Seth Bloom is. Seth Bloom need to come out and speak out because, yeah, he said him and Tupac had an intense relationship, right? This is something that never came out while Tupac was living, ladies and gentlemen, right? And like I say, I see a lot of resemblance and a lot of that information that was in Stacey Robinson's book, the authorized biography that kind of mirrors some of the things that Jeff Pearlman is talking about in this book 2 years later. Like I said, this is the book that people are going to buy. And they, like I said, for the people that told me, this is the book that they're going to buy right here. They say they taking the people that told me they taking and shipping that Jeff Pearlman thing back, and they're going to get the authorized biography, right? Like I said, which has poems and stuff about Tupac's writing and all of the other things that Afeni Shakur allowed to be given to Stacey Robinson to put into this book. And like I said, once again, ladies and gentlemen, be careful about the information that you take in regards to our heroes, our entertainers, and all of those things, because people will try to recreate this narrative as if they know, and if you really don't know, you're quick to believe it because you see it on what is to believe to be legitimate platforms and people you come to know and trust. Like what's that? All the Smoke. Like he was on All the Smoke. You know what I mean? You see Matt Barnes, sitting there talking to him because we seen Matt Barnes, play basketball or whatever. But a lot of those guys don't know. They don't know. They play basketball. You know what I mean? And I don't expect them to know. Like I said, I don't think they've read the whole book. Because if they did, they would have asked key questions like some of what Edie was asking. You understand what I'm saying? But they don't know to ask those questions because they were not there. They weren't involved. So they wouldn't know the questions to ask. You understand what I'm saying? So like I said, once again, be very careful. But Tupac warned us, ladies and gentlemen. Tupac warned us about people like Jeff Pearlman, right? Like I said, hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the share button. Like I said, if you respect Tupac's legacy, like I say, comment below. Like I said, listen to me, and I'm gonna ask you an honest question. Should those people who never met Tupac speak about Tupac like they knew his soul, because that's what Jeff Pearlman's been doing. He's been out here speaking about Tupac like he knew Tupac's soul, ladies and gentlemen. Really though, you know, telling Edie, you know, I'm not saying that you're lying, you know, but I interviewed hell, you know, a shit ton of people, a shitload of people. You know what I mean? Like what? And you're talking to somebody who was actually there in reference to the subject that they were discussing at the time. And Jeff Pearlman was still trying to make the argument about him being right. It's insane. It's insane. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. And more importantly, I appreciate you watching. Shout out to the chat. Who's that? Jesse D. Shakur, Southeast DC. What up, DC? Henry Cedillo, Aura, Tony Wellsby, Ma Dizzle, K2, Gang, Kenneth Malone, Trishawn W. Who else is that? Jay Edwards. Who else? Markeith Bankroll, Stephanie Thorne, Terrence Taylor, Shanta Cooper, Alejandro Gonzalez, WVZYX. Who else? If I missed anybody, ladies and gentlemen, aura of this guy, Randall, Miss Ashley Matthews. What's up, Ashley? Who else? Sherrod, Sir Jackson. And like I said, all of the people, Joe, what's that? Joe Harness. Who else? Andrew Collin. Like I said, Boogie Down. Like I said, and if anybody that I miss, blame it on my mind, not my heart, ladies and gentlemen. Your boy Delray, straight gang.
Life is like those cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.